Good afternoon, and welcome to this special episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. I am delighted and honored to be joined by Dr. Pao Lor. He holds the Patricia Wood Bear Professorship in Education at UW Green Bay, and he is an author, and he's going to join us today to talk a little bit about his book, Modern Jungles. He'll be holding an author event tomorrow night at the Manitowoc Public Library. That's Thursday, November 11th at 6 p.m. to talk even more in depth about his book. But we're so delighted to have him here today. Hi, welcome to Coffee on the Coast. We're so happy to see you.
Thank you, Tina. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and it's so nice to meet you. And so we were just talking a little bit before we came online that this is your first book, and it's called Modern Jungles: A Hmong Refugees' Childhood Story of Survival. And I think this is probably a story that many people here are unfamiliar with. And so first of all, thank you for sharing it. And let's talk a little bit about your story. What prompted you to write this book? And let's talk a little bit then about what your story is.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting question about why why would someone decide to embark on a journey that's after finishing that first book, uh, it's a very exhausting process. And so I think more than anything else, I just felt that the story, it happens to be my story, but it's a story that I felt it was very unique to tell. It's a critical lens for the readers and for the public to use, to understand the greater Hmong American experience, also to have a greater understanding of refugees and immigrants coming to the United States. So I wanted to be a simple story for people to read, but a story that has many complex global as well as local issues. And so, depending on the reader and what as they read, that they can gain many things out of the story.
Right, and you're not alone. You didn't go through this alone, but we should frame this for the viewers. So, as a young child, because of Hmong support for the American military during the whole Vietnam conflict era, that that the Hmong clans that lived there were really in danger once the American forces left that area, and that necessitated having to flee, right? Your family being in danger, and not just your family, but really the majority of the Hmong clan that was supportive at that time had to, for survival, flee that area. And so this wasn't a cakewalk. This wasn't a trip that you got to plan in advance and fly first class or anything like that, right? We're talking about having to find food, having to, be constantly aware of survival and struggle through not only a journey, but then crossing the Mekong River and becoming refugees in Thailand. As a child, how old were you when you were going through
Mhm.
this?
You provide a great context. At that time, I would say in the 1960s and the 1970s, many Hmong Americans were isolated from the world. So with our exposure, the little exposure that we had, one of such exposure was indeed, to the United States, and to prior to the United States, it was France. So our contacts, with the world were very limited. And so in my situation, I was a child that was born into the war. So I was born in the early 1970s. That was you could say, near the tail end, a few years before the United States officially pulled out of Southeast Asia. Um, I was born into, in an isolated village with little contact with the world. And so basically, you're born, and then it's constant moving. And you wondered, I think for a child, you just think that is normal, that is a part of life. that you move from one village to another, one village to another, and then suddenly that abruptly changed, in which now you were at some point I did eventually understand that we were leaving and going somewhere, but I wasn't sure exactly where that somewhere was. And so you could say that it was a time in which life was very elusive. You're not really sure of what is going on, other than just simply to flow with the way that life was back then.
Do you think, looking back, as a child, do you think it was easier to deal with because you didn't have expectations necessarily? Like you said, from a child's perspective, it is just that moving around, it's just what life is.
hmm and that's a great question, which delves into some of the implicit themes in the book. As at least in my case anyway, as a child, uh, in 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 my situation, and I think in many children who were in the same situation as I was, because we did not have anything else to compare to. So you did not, it's we did not have any formal education. We didn't know, what was basically, I didn't know what was beyond the horizon. So indeed, you could say that to a great extent, perhaps the innocence protected kids from like myself, from fully understanding the magnitude of what was going on. And so those are some of the implicit, because I wanted readers to really get what it feels like to go through that entire experience. So I am just hoping that the readers would, you can read it for the surface level if you like, or you can read for the deeper meanings, such as the question that you just asked.
Do you think, were you aware that your life was in danger? Did you know that it was survival at the time? Or, did the family members that you were traveling with try to protect you, protect you in that way?
For a good part of that journey, um, I did not. Hmong culture is at that point. Hmong culture, or the way that I experienced it, it was just constantly moving. At some point, I did become aware of why we were moving.
Mhm.
But for the majority of the time, no, I was not aware of what we were trying to do or why we were constantly moving. And then when I finally somewhat understood, um, it's maybe some readers will read that little episode, and I'm hoping that they understand about my point about that little episode, at least from my perspective anyway, that as people we learn to construct meanings out of the world that we live in. And so that was my initial, you could say, initiation into understanding, or how I started to construct my reality and my understanding of the world. And that was when I learned a little bit about, you could say, the concept of good versus evil, who's good and who's bad. And that, that's a part of, you could say, the journey itself, and some of the things that readers can read, and they can, retrospect as well as introspect, and see when they had that awakening moment as well, or just how we have come to understand our reality and what was going on.
So for viewers, let's give them a little bit of a sense of place. I'm going to pull up this map. So this is a map from the book, and it shows the general area. And so you started off in Laos, and is your village shown on there?
uh where I was born, yes, it's Puka, which is Puka. And basically, the story takes place right in central Laos. All those little dots there are some of the places that I covered in the book.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I had no idea what these places were, or that these places had names. It was much later on that through storytelling, or you hear from your uncles or your adults in your household, that eventually I had access to the map of Laos. And then it took us. This was actually generated by a company. I just shared with them. I had a general idea where everything was, but I forgot what the company was, but it's we supplied the information to the company, and the company actually looked back into the 1970s, how many maps were like back then, and so they actually came up with the map.
Ah, wow. And so like on the map then it shows so your journey took you from Laos, starting in Phuket,
Hmm.
at some point across the Mekong River and then into Thailand. Um, were you at both of these refugee camps?
Yes, I was at the. You can kind of see on the map. I was. We first. We crossed the river about, I would say, 60 miles, around 60 miles south of the Ban Nong Khai camp, which is a city that just right across from Vientiane, which is the capital of Laos. And then from Ban Vinai, we were moved. Oh no, from Ban Nong Khai, we were moved to Ban Vinai, which I believe is roughly about 30 miles from Ban Nong Khai. And it was much later on when I learned, and that has been kind of the story of my life. It's I didn't understand why we were moved, and so it wasn't until like 2004 when I actually met another individual who were at Ban Vinai at that time, and we got we started talking, and he shared with me as to why they were moved from Ban Vinai to Ban Nong Khai, and how and then why we were moved from Ban Nong Khai to Ban Vinai. And it's quite an interesting story as to how we got moved.
And do you detail that in the book?
No, that's
No.
yeah, that's maybe for later.
Okay, that'll be part two.
Yeah,
That'll be
yeah,
part
maybe
two.
part two.
And so, paint the picture too. When you say
Mhm.
the Mekong River, this isn't just a tiny stream that you can walk across. We're talking a powerful river, maybe
Mhm.
comparable to like the Mississippi River, right?
Mhm.
How
Yes, it
how do you
depends.
cross?
Yeah, it depends on the season. During the dry season, it's not that bad, depending on the section of the river. But during the rainy season, yeah, it's almost impossible to cross without even on those some of the boats that we used in crossing the river. So yes, that would be a good comparison. During the rainy season, it's a treacherous river.
And then there's another picture from your book that I'm going to share. So this is you. You're so cute. And it looks like this is stamped Thailand. So this is maybe at immigration. Can you tell us a little bit about, just this whole experience, what you were thinking? Did you also learn how to speak Thai?
A little bit. I did go to school for like maybe 3 months. And so for about 3 months, I learned a little bit of Thai. And that is, I believe, the first picture that was taken of me. And it is, I was told, I recently met a lady, a Hmong lady in Minnesota, and we were talking about the book, and she saw the picture, and I asked her what the picture, why did they take this particular picture? And I shared with her that I put this in the book, but I don't really understand why they took this picture. And she was telling me that this picture was taken so that you could eat. Yeah, this is how you get your food. So there's my name, and then you see the T44637.
Mm.
That is our relocation number, as well as our identification number, a family identification number while we're in camp. And then you have the 7/over 8. That I am the seventh member of an 8 family member.
Wow. Wow. And then,
I
so
don't remember that picture being taken. It was included in our immigration papers.
it's kind of amazing that you still have it. That's amazing. So, how old were you in this picture? Do you know? 5
I'm
or
thinking
6?
7.
7?
Hmm.
And then how old were you when you immigrated to the USA?
I was 7 and 10 months.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't too long that you were there. And so what did you think when, you knew you were going to be going from Thailand and coming to the USA? It must have been your first time on an airplane, I imagine.
Yes, I did not even know I was on an airplane. I had no concept of what an airplane was. I knew that we were going to the United States, and I had this, you could say, um, f- very naive understanding of life in the United States. Basically, I thought the United States was heaven, and that like it's almost like when you get there, because for much of my life up to that point, there was just a lot of suffering and a lot of uncertainty, and you did not know where you were going. And so when we learned that we were coming to the United States, that's what I I had in mind. That's what I was envisioning. That once I got to the United States, there would be plenty of food. There would be all the people would be nice. It was almost like you like a utopia, a heaven. And so that was my, you could say, my understanding of the United States prior to getting here.
Did it meet your expectations?
Uh, yes, I would say yes.
Wonderful.
After having been here for 40 years, and even in the beginning as well, I think it did, for me anyway. It has been. Um, I always wonder back. It was my brother, my oldest brother, who made the decision for us to come to the United States. And so, for me anyway, it has been uh, the and I'm sure that many Hmong Americans will be sharing a similar belief as well, that it was, for me, it was the best possible decision.
Yeah, and I think that you
Yeah.
have really, started off with that incredible struggle in your life. I mean, I don't even know if struggle is the right word to uh, capture really the depth of it, but you have completely succeeded in your life here, and it is wonderful. I just pulled out this little excerpt, and I just love this description that it says, "Today, I hold the Patricia Wood Bear Professorship in Education at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay, where I'm also chair of the professional program in education. Maya, is Maya your wife?
Yes.
Okay. Maya is a social worker in northeastern Wisconsin working for Outagamie County Health and Human Services. You've achieved a level of security and success that 25 years ago would have seemed surreal. And even today, you think of your life as an ongoing struggle. But it's just so wonderful to know what you have accomplished with the opportunities that you've been given. And I'm just so fortunate to be having this conversation with you today. I just want to remind people that we're talking about the book that you wrote, Modern Jungles: Among Refugees' Childhood Story of Survival. And you're going to be holding an author's event. And this is going to happen tomorrow night, Thursday, November 11th, 6 o'clock p.m. at the Manitowoc Public Library. So people can meet you in person. You'll be talking more about the book, I imagine. What a wonderful opportunity to learn more about your story.
Yeah, I look so forward to the event tomorrow, just to meet folks, and hopefully they have questions that I can answer, and for me, just to hopefully give them more information that's going to enrich their reading experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're fortunate that you've shared this story with us. I know it's not unique either, to know that so many people in the world have had to go through this kind of
Hmm.
struggle. I think it's important that you share it and that other people can become aware of it and hopefully empathize with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
completely
So
agree with you, Tina. That's the greater the greater reason. You asked me earlier about why write the book, and those are some of the reasons why. It happens to be my story, but hopefully when people read it, that there are greater issues, global issues, international issues, and it really speaks to humanity in general. That hopefully there are lessons that we can learn, and lessons that we can use from the story moving forward.
yeah, absolutely. Where can people acquire the book? Is it available at the library or at bookstores?
Yeah, so it's published by the Wisconsin Historical Society Press in Madison, so you can buy the book directly from them. Which that's one. Many of the public libraries, I think the majority of the public libraries in Wisconsin have copies, so you can borrow, from one of the libraries, public libraries. There are many independent bookstores in Wisconsin, and certain parts of the United States that carry it. Major outlets like Amazon and Barnes and Nobles also have the book available. So there are quite, a number of outlets, and you can choose whichever one is your favorite.
Awesome. So, and it's written in English. Is there also a Hmong version? Did you write it in
You
both languages?
that's you asked a very very good question, um, which I'm hoping that maybe some readers will understand the process that I went through, in which that I first understood many of these experiences in Hmong. And so to have, you could say, to go through this kind of dualism of transferring the knowledge from Hmong and then put it in English. So I did include some phrases, some Hmong phrases in the book, just to give it a little flair. But no, for the moment, there is just the English version with a few touches of Hmong.
The Hmong flavor. Very
Yeah,
nice. Very
yeah.
nice. Well, I just want to say, Dr. Lor, what chow, thank you so
Oh,
much.
that's great. 请我来，绝佳，绝佳。
Thank you so much for
Yep.
taking the time to join us here today and to share your story. I am really looking forward to reading the full book myself. And I really encourage viewers to stop by the Manitowoc Public Library again Thursday, November 11th, 6 o'clock p.m. Modern Jungles, A Hmong Refugees' Childhood Story of Survival by Pao Lor. He will be at the library tomorrow night. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really look forward to the next opportunity to meet you.
Thank you, Tina. I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.
Wonderful. Take care, everyone. Thank you
Take
for
care.
watching Coffee on the Coast.
Yep. Thank you, Tina.